today we have the 2001 Volvo v40, and the alternator is froze up and needs to be replaced down there. So, first thing we have to do is take off the battery cable. Okay, the next part would be to remove the V-belt, but since this is already missing, it broke, we don't have to do that part, but basically you have to use a ratchet or a wrench to release the tension on the belt and remove the belt. So here are the instructions. This is the picture, and here's the instructions for the first part. So here's the mounting brackets that it's referring to from this side, screws, and the lower mounting bracket down here. All that has to These are 10 millimeters. Well, that one's not a 10 millimeter. $12 millimeter. There, that's a 10 millimeter. There's our mounting bracket. Let's see if we could just move it out of the way without taking it all the way off. But you don't want to break these hose clamps. All this has been replaced on my vehicle at one time, but this plastic piece and these connections, if they're not new, they could break. Now we have another bottom part of this that has to be taken off, and that's what I'm going to do next. So it's kind of tight down in here, but you can see where we're having to go with this. So what I found is that the bolt will not come all the way out of the bottom. Down here you can see the bolt. The radiator's in the way. I can't pull it all the way out, so I'm just going to leave it there and move the bracket. So these clips have to come off for the wiring, because our goal is to remove this pump, or power steering. And then there are bolts in here, in this area, where the wheel, you have to turn the wheel so that you could have access to the two bolts on the side of the pump. They're in this area over here, and that's what we're going. Now we're taking out the second bolt using a longer extension to kind of help get it out. And then finally the third bolt is here. So we're just going to lift this out now that the bolt's out and set it to the side, maybe like that, out of the way. Now we can see our alternator better. This is the tensioner we talked about earlier. You check that bearing and make sure it's good too. But now for the alternator. So here's the other diagram for the instructions, but we have to disconnect the electrical wiring from the alternator. Then we have to remove the connector, remove the wiring clamp, remove the positive lead from the alternator. And there's the picture and the bolts that we have to take out. And then remove the upper mounting screw, remove the 2 upper screws from the air conditioning compressor. Move the screws approximately 30 millimeters forward. Remove the 2 lower screws from the air conditioning compressor. Lift the generator or alternator out by twisting and move. So you kind of have to twist it around and get it out. We're going to remove the upper screw first. This comes all the way out. And now we're going to remove the wiring before we go any further. It's located back here. This clip comes off. It's the cover for the bolt. Comes off first. Now we have to remove the bolt from the wiring. You can see it down there. Okay, the wire, the nut is off. I remove the wire there. Okay. Next we're going for a bolt, and it's down here. You see where my finger is? That's the second top bolt on the AC compressor. Okay, that's got to come out and pull back. You don't have to take it all the way out. There's another bolt you have to loosen, and this is the bottom of this bracket that we worked on earlier. But that bolt has to be removed and pulled back. It doesn't have to come all the way out. So again, we're going to work on this bolt down here on the top of the compressor. I believe those are 12 millimeter. Yeah, 12 millimeter. Okay, so here's what I did. This ratchet, it's got it's a ratcheting wrench. You have to have this. It's so tight in here to get to these bolts, these 2 top bolts. I've got that loose. I went ahead from the bottom of the car, same size, 12 millimeter, loosened. I took one bolt, pulled it out. I didn't take it out, but pulled it all the way back to clear the hole, and then I pulled the other bolt out just far, or loosen it far enough to where the compressor would move. I didn't want to take it all the way out because I didn't want the compressor to drop and have to reposition it and all that. So I'm going to try to pull the alternator now without taking the final bolt all the way out of the compressor, because I feel like it's going to fall down some. And if I could get the alternator out without pulling that bolt, it's going to be a lot easier putting the bolts for the AC compressor back in when I'm putting it back together. I'm going to try to put the camera so you can see how this comes out. First time I've done it, so I'm not sure how this is going to work. I'll lift it out. Instructions say to twist it. But I know one thing I've got to do is get this other wire out. I could not get out earlier. First. There. Came off. It's just a pull plug. you much room, I'll tell you that. But it came out just like that. So just a note, I have to kind of remember that was the position that it came out, straight up. Just barely enough room to come out of there. So got to work with that. So what I've decided is while I'm here, it's easy to get to, I am going to change that idler pulley. It's like 20 bucks from Advanced Auto. Buy online, you can save 20%. So I think it's time to change it. I changed it about 2 years ago, and it's got a tiny bit of play. All them belt marks on there. I think I'm just going to go ahead and change it. Okay, try to put the new alternator in. A little bit better position on the camera. Here we go. Got down. And then we got to turn that daddy. Got to go around. Rotate it. Rotate it in. There it is. Not too bad. Make sure I get our wire in there. It's a lot easier to do this. Attach this wire when it's moved out of the way. Alright. See if I got enough room for the other wire. Looks like it. Yeah, I'm gonna see if I could get that wire on there too. The main voltage wire and the little small wire with the plug. Why I am got it twisted a little bit. It's a lot easier to get to it now than putting it back in there and trying to get it in position. Okay, I think I will be able to get it. Looks like I got it in the right position. This bolt, you don't want to over tighten because it will twist inside the alternator and that will ruin your day. Okay, so that's in position. Now it's just a matter of putting our upper bolts in, lower bolts on the AC. Just reverse how we took it out. Okay, so got it back in. Left the bracket right here still loose because we have to put the power steering pump back on. But both of the lower bolts are tightened up. The top right bolt is tightened up. Again, it's really tight in there, but it's tightened. So next we're going to put the power steering pump back on. But first, like I said earlier, the pulley that was right there, we are replacing that. So that's going to go on next. As a side note, I actually replaced this about 2014, but had a little play in it, and better safe than sorry. At this point, it's easy to get to, 20 bucks. So before I forget, there's a 12mm bolt. If you remember, it goes here, that way, in that direction. That needs put in and tightened down as well. Okay, so now we're going to reposition the power steering pump and bolt it down. It's in place. Three bolts here, one in the top left, one just below this, and one on the right side as well. You have to turn the wheel to get your ratchet in there, or your socket. And this one is 12mm. Okay, and our other bolt goes right here. So I'm going to put those in and tighten them down. Power steering pump's back in. Make sure you hook all your clips back up. Hoses are in place. And this bolt has to go back on. Before you put this pump on, make sure your bracket is pushed that way, so that you could just lift it back over and put the bolt in. And then have to tighten the bolt in the bottom, down there, for the bottom of the bracket, it's on the AC pump. And then we can't forget about this either. This has got to come over. It's got to go in with that. I got to put that in there. Okay, so we can't forget that. Okay, so this is the belt pattern on the engine, and you actually push the wrench down to relieve the tension, and then let it go to get the tension back. It's tight in there, but main thing. So the belt is on now. Took me a while, but my problem was there's actually a bracket on the crank pulley that kind of helps you guide the belt. Well, I got the belt across that bracket, so just be careful you don't do that. And last thing I have to do is hook up my battery, and it should be finished. So if you like this, give me a thumbs up, and see you next time.